Isn't it great?
I mean, it's neat, but we're not even doing anything.
It gets better. Wait until you see it work its magic. It's the future. Why would I spend my time having fun when I can build a robot to have fun for me? Imagine a robot that can sort out all the pieces in a puzzle and figure out their shape, and then think really hard to figure out how they fit together, and then assemble it in one straight shot. It's a super interesting problem with all kinds of challenges. But if that isn't spicy enough, it's designed to solve what may be the world's hardest puzzle, a puzzle that's all white. They say it takes over a month to solve, and that's because you have to search through every piece every single time to find a match. Do you know what would be even harder? 5,000 pieces all white. They don't even make that. This is just a normal 5,000 piece puzzle that I'm gonna paint all white. If you do the math, it should take about 2 years of 18-hour days to solve this puzzle. If you're doing it at a more leisurely pace, it's more like 10 years to life. And as terrible as that sounds, if this was a real product, I bet there's people that would buy it. My original plan was to use my robot arm to do this, but the puzzle's bigger than I thought, and there's no way to make the robot reach the entire puzzle without putting it on top of another robot to move it around, so that's just not gonna work. So what I'm gonna do is build a big table with a gantry built into it that will move a little cart around, which will pick up and move the pieces. This is gonna be a lot easier to explain when I actually have it, so let's get this thing made. Step one is to make a giant table because 5,000 piece puzzles are huge. This thing has like 150 parts, so I'm printing as many as I can possibly get away with. Everything else is cut from raw materials using a variety of sharp blades. I can never get over having the CNC making parts for me while I'm doing other stuff. All right, now we just gotta bolt everything together. The pieces all move without hitting each other, which is a great start. There is a lot going on with this robot, but fundamentally it's only doing two things: moving pieces around and taking pictures of them. The robot's using a little suction cup to pick up pieces because it would be really hard to make a little hand. The suction cup is on a little platform that can move up and down, and it can also spin to get parts in the right orientation, which really complicates things. The vacuum system rides on bearings and is rotated by this servo motor. All of that is lifted up and down by this funny little RC car shock. We want to be able to push firmly but not destroy everything if there's anything that gets jammed up, so the shock provides some wiggle room. If you want the pieces to ever come off the suction cup, you need a way to turn it on and off. So it has a hole in the middle of it, which we can either attach to a vacuum to make pieces stick to it, or not, to make pieces fall off it. I'm using a compressed air powered vacuum, which sounds like it should just shoot the piece off, but it doesn't, and the way it works is awesome. This is another air powered vacuum that I have, which is used for cleaning. Air goes in here and shoots out the back, and somehow it creates a bunch of suction on the front. The pressurized air goes to a special nozzle that makes a high-speed cone of air. The air inside of the cone is just chilling and minding its own business, but you can't really have air moving fast past air that's not moving. So the fast-moving air just pulls the still air along with it. This creates a continuous flow of air, which you can use as a vacuum. This may seem like a roundabout way to generate a vacuum, but it's so much easier than the alternatives. All you need is a solenoid valve to turn the air on and off, which are cheap and really easy to control electrically, and then the little vacuum generator, which is a piece of metal. The automatic piece picker can be moved anywhere on the table with this gantry, and it's gonna be moving a lot of pieces. So my main design goal was to make sure that it could move quickly. And as with many of my projects, if you want it to go fast, you need it to be light. Achieving speed is why this gantry has such a strange belt design. To understand what's going on, let's start with a simpler arrangement. We could have a motor moving a belt like this to move the cart back and forth. And then we could have another motor moving another belt to move this beam back and forth. But this double stinks because you're moving a heavy motor, and if you only push on one side of the beam, it really wants to bend and break. What you really want is a belt on each side of the beam pulling it. But this still stinks because we're moving that heavy motor. And this is where things get cool. Imagine if I reroute this belt like this. Now the belt will move the cart left and right. And then if I reroute the other belt in the same way, I have this very strange looking arrangement. If I pull on both of the belts like this, they pull on the cart in opposite directions and it cancels out. So it stays still, but the gantry beam moves down. But if I move one of the motors less than the other one, they only partially cancel out and the beam and the cart move together. If I move the belts in opposite directions, they both push in the same direction on the cart and only it moves. By coordinating the motion of both motors, we can move the cart anywhere we want with 2 stationary motors. Isn't that awesome? This belt arrangement is called Core XY. You'll see it used a lot in 3D printers. All right, let's see what this thing can do. Oh, that does not sound good. Let's try again. These motors are so powerful that they're making the belt skip. I made some tweaks to the design that have made the problem a lot better, but I'm still not able to use all of the motor power. It's totally fine for now, but if I do want more speed in the future, I'll have to make some more modifications so I can get all the power out. All right, we are now moving pieces. We're at least 20% done. Somehow the robot needs to pick up every piece of the puzzle, scan it, and store it somewhere for future use. For now, I'm gonna just feed the robot one piece at a time, and even doing it this way turns out to be pretty challenging. Even if I have something like this so that the robot knows basically where the piece is, I can't just pick it up in the middle because some pieces the suction cup can't get a seal on it. Somehow the robot needs to know the sweet spot for a given piece to pick it up. This is a camera pointing down so that the robot can find the pieces. When it sees a piece, it calculates the point on it that's furthest from all the edges. This is the best place to pick the piece up because it has the most room for the suction cup. I want this robot to work with any puzzle with any pattern on the top, which could lead to some situations where the pieces blend in with the table, which would make them very difficult to pick out with the camera. And so what I'm gonna do instead is pick them up off of a light. The bright backlight will make every piece look like a black on white silhouette, which is very easy to reliably process. The robot's taking pictures of the puzzle pieces to figure out if they fit together. For this to have any chance of working, accurate measurements are critical, which is a lot easier said than done because most camera lenses give a distorted view of the world. Do you really think my face is this shape? If the computer used this picture of my face to figure out its shape, it would think it looks like this. I have this grid paper that I know is square. I can take a picture of it and see how the lens distorts it. So this is obviously wrong, and if we measure how a lens distorts the image, we can actually correct for it by distorting it in the opposite direction. But this only corrects one of a few problems. So I have this part that's a bunch of little pillars, and even when it's pointing straight at the camera, you can see the sides of the pillars. And the same thing happens for a puzzle piece. If the back and sides are similar colors, it can be almost impossible to figure out the actual shape of the puzzle piece. This happens because the camera sees everything with a field of view. As this line goes from one extreme of the field of view to the other, everything it touches, the camera will see. The wider the field of view is, the worse this problem is. If we move the camera far away and zoom in, the field of view gets smaller and these problems get a lot smaller. And if we take this idea to the extreme and move the camera infinitely far away, the problems disappear. Getting the camera infinitely far away is challenging, and I'd rather not attempt it, but we're in luck because there's a special kind of lens that sort of does this. This is a telecentric lens, and it sees things as if they're infinitely far away. You can think of it as seeing a tube that comes straight out of the lens that doesn't get any wider. It's really weird. Now we can move this piece anywhere in the view of the camera and we don't see the sides. It's also always the same size regardless of how far it is from the camera. The camera is mounted below the table looking up through a hole, and the robot can bring a piece over the hole and it'll take a picture of the bottom of the piece. Assembling puzzle pieces is a delicate operation. If you're off by even a millimeter, they don't go together. For this to work, the gantry has to be very accurate. And unfortunately, I can tell just by looking at the gantry that it's not accurate. And if you can tell by eye that it's bad, it's really bad. Let me show you what I mean. If the robot's accurate, this will be a 600 millimeter square. Yeah, that's definitely not a square. Instead of making it nice or tweaking it endlessly to make it better, I'm just gonna fix it in software. You may have seen me using my OptiTrack cameras in some previous projects. If you haven't, it's a set of tracking cameras that can very accurately track the location of reflective markers like this. If you want to understand how they work, check out my wall painting robot video where I go into more detail. Putting a marker on the gantry allows me to track its position very accurately. And then if it's going to the wrong spot, my software can correct it so it goes to the right spot. All right, take two. All right, now that is a square. This is pretty cool. You can see it moving the gantry to the side to correct for the non-square motion. All right, here's a big problem. The gantry accelerates very aggressively, which can shake the whole table, which can make these pieces wander around. And if the pieces move from where the robot left them, that's a huge problem. The first thing I did is I made the legs super stiff with these tension steel cables. This should keep the legs from flexing and acting like springs. The strength difference of a couple steel cables is so huge, I have to show you a demo. This is a model of 2 of the table's legs without bracing, and this is one with bracing. You can see how much this flexes with me barely pulling on it. When you add the bracing, it's not going anywhere. I could probably hang from this if I could find a way to rig it. All right. Such a huge difference. The tension cables help, but I'm not convinced that the vibration problem is totally fixed. And I need to be sure, because if the pieces move around, it's game over. So what I did is I made the table hollow, and if I need to, I can drill a bunch of holes in the surface of the table. And then this super powerful vacuum will suck all the air from the inside of the table, which will pull air through all the holes drilled in the top, which will suck the pieces down to the plywood surface so that they can't move around. For it to work, I need about 30,000 holes. I made this little drilling attachment that can attach to the robot where the suction cup would go, and instead of picking up pieces, it will drill holes into itself. I'm not gonna do this just yet, but if we need it, we've got it. We've got ourselves a little bit of a space dispute. Before the puzzle algorithm can solve the puzzle, it needs pictures of all the pieces. This means all the pieces need to be scanned into the machine. And if I just set the pieces on the table, there's not enough room to assemble the puzzle. I thought about just making the table bigger, but it's already huge. And then I thought the robot could make little stacks of pieces until it's ready for them, but any vibrations will knock those stacks over. So I'm making a little magazine that the robot can store the pieces in off to the side. It will basically be a little platform that I can raise up and down with a screw. Whenever the robot sets a piece on the platform, it'll lower down a little bit and then be ready for the next piece. The only problem is that stacking 5,000 puzzle pieces is 35 feet tall. So I'm gonna make a bunch of shorter magazines in a row. I'm making the magazine out of polycarbonate. This will let me see what's going on when it jams up. I wonder if it would be possible to design something with more parts than this. I really should have just made the table bigger. The design for this is kind of weird because I didn't want to have 21 motors driving on the lead screws. It would be expensive and a huge pain to wire up. And if you think about it, you really only need to move one at a time. There's only one robot. And so what I did is I put a single motor on a rail that I can move back and forth to any of the lead screws and turn whichever one I want. We do need a second motor to move the first motor around. There are some tricky little details to ensure it doesn't jam, but I think this design can be reliable. Having a single motor that can drive a bunch of outputs like this is called multiplexing. All right, that's all the hardware. Now we can put it through its paces. The robot continuously scans the piece pickup area. When it sees a part, it calculates the best spot to grab it, and then takes it over to get scanned. The software will calculate the shape and size of the piece, square it up, and then store it in the magazine. Well, that's what it would do, at least in a perfect world. In practice, when you combine this many complicated things, it never works on the first, second, third, or fifth try. I like to call this integration hell, because there's lots of problems and it usually sucks. What the? But eventually you get through most of the problems. All right, things seem to be stable, so it's time to try out my phase 1 testing puzzle. Here we go. All right, the robot has all the pieces and pictures of them. The laptop sent everything over to my editing computer because it's a beast, and solving this puzzle, even with only 9 pieces, is super computationally intense. A 9-piece puzzle is taking it a couple of minutes. A 5,000-piece puzzle is impossible without me making it faster, but one step at a time. So here's the solution for the 9-piece puzzle. You can see that all the pieces don't line up perfectly. This is one of the things that makes it so hard to compute. Once it has a solution, it sends it back to the laptop, and if I hit enter, it won't do the right thing yet. There's still one more problem. The assembly plan wants to construct the puzzle from one side to the other in one straight shot. But these pieces are in a random order. It's just whatever order I gave them to the robot. And so the first piece that it wants is probably somewhere in the middle or the bottom. I wrote a little routine that'll take the pieces out and then put them back in the correct order. All right, it's finally ready to try to solve the puzzle. So here we go.
Yay, game night.
Not the best start, but it did put them in a grid. It's better than nothing. Let's try again. I think it might be better. All right, this time's the charm. Maybe I should pivot and make this robot an avant-garde puzzle solver. All right, let's try again. It's definitely got the right idea. There's just some problems still. All right, this one's the one. All right, maybe not. Ugh, what you haven't seen is all the software I've been going through. All right, this last time. Yes. Come on, baby. One more. Just one more. Yes. Yes. One more. Finally. What a pain. Oh, that was 3 weeks of work. I know it's only a 3x3, but it's so cool. And I think that's because so much has to go right to even do this that it's amazing to see it all come together. This is a very highly abridged version of the struggle that it took to get this thing solving even the 3x3. All the algorithms to take the pictures of the pieces and then solve the puzzle is doing an enormous amount of work. I spent over 3 weeks on it, and there's still a lot more work to be done before I can do a 5,000 piece puzzle. The algorithm is so slow that it would take about 3,000 years to solve the puzzle. So instead of just grinding through the software issues and then glossing over it like I normally do, I want to take you deep inside the matrix. I want to show you how this thing actually solves puzzles and how I made it fast, or at least how I think I'm going to make it fast, because it's super interesting. So all of that's going to be in part 2. So if that sounds interesting, please consider subscribing so you don't miss it. And before we go, the wife is going to come over and we're going to do a slightly bigger puzzle than a 3x3 for game night. If seeing all these projects get you super amped up to go out there and learn and build stuff, you should take a minute to check out this video's sponsor, Brilliant. I admire Brilliant because they're doing something very important. They make a tool that makes it so much easier to learn complex, important stuff. They'll take a topic like learning to program Python, and they'll present it in an interactive, hands-on way that has you writing actual code in the lesson. Hands-on learning by doing is an extremely effective way to learn. And it's so much more than Python. Look at all these courses. All the math, physics, computer science, stuff that you thought you had to go to college to learn. Nope. They take these big, intimidating subjects like vector calculus, and they divide it up into a bunch of bite-sized pieces that build one on top of the other, which is really good for learning a bit every day. This is how I've learned a lot of what I know. I try to spend at least 30 minutes a day learning something new. I know I've said it a bunch of times, but it's amazing how much you learn when you exercise your brain regularly like this. I've been working through the course on quantum mechanics because I know nothing about it, at least not yet, and it's been super interesting. So if you want to learn a bunch of interesting new stuff that's going to level you up and make you more capable, go check out Brilliant. All you have to do is go to brilliant.org/stuffmadehere. You can sign up for free, and the first 200 people that do this will get 20% off their annual premium membership. Finding ways to always be learning new stuff is one of the best things you can do. So I hope you check out Brilliant, and that's it. Thank you, Brilliant, for sponsoring this video, and thank you for listening. This thing is so cool. Isn't it great?
I mean, it's neat, but we're not even doing anything.
It gets better. This is probably going to take about an hour and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It has to think really hard. See why I need that?
Yay, game night.
Oh, shoot. It's already done. It's way more fun when you actually see it solving the puzzle.
And maybe if it had more pieces.